A long time ago, in an ancient African city called Ediko, there lived a woman named Zhani. She was the most beautiful woman anyone had ever seen in that city. Her skin was just like bronze under the sun. Her hair sparkled like the full moon, and her steps seemed to scatter golden dust whenever she walked along the street. But there was one problem. Zhani loved riches and jewels more than anything else in the world. Oftentimes, she would say to herself, I really need to enjoy my life to the fullest. That was her belief while she was growing up, and so she could do anything to enjoy herself any time of the day. She didn't care about kindness or love. To Zhani, people were only useful if they could give her more wealth. With a cheerful smile on her face, she considered herself the luckiest woman in that city. One evening, as Zhani walked through the marketplace, her presence caused a huge distraction among the traders. Women paused just to admire her beauty. Men left whatever they were doing just to look at the beautiful Zhani. A young boy selling flowers shyly approached her and offered her a very beautiful flower. Zhani glanced at the flower and looked away. Instead of gratitude, she said, I don't need flowers. Bring me diamonds if you want me to smile. People who heard what she said were disappointed, but it didn't mean anything to her. One New Year's Day, Zhani married Omari, a rich merchant. His chiefs carried goods to faraway lands, and his mansion was the biggest in all of Edeko. Their wedding was so grand that it became the talk of the town for a while. Golden chariots carried the couple through the streets. There were dancers who danced under the moonlight, and drums that echoed through the hills. It was a grand feast that lasted for 3 days, and no one in Edeko went hungry during those days. I'll do anything for my beautiful wife. She is the queen of my world, Omari said to Zhani a few days after their wedding. Zhani demanded nothing but the finest silks and jewels, and Omari spared no expense to keep her happy. But Zhani's hunger for riches and wealth had no end. Omari once threw a grand banquet to impress Zhani, just to outshine every other merchant in Edeko. In that banquet, he ordered very beautiful peacocks to parade through the feast with gold chains around their necks. One particular stubborn peacock refused to cooperate, breaking loose and knocking over an entire table of roasted lamb and fine wine. As the guests drew back to save their clothes, Zhani laughed melodiously and said, I'm sure the peacock is upset because their gold isn't pure enough. Everyone was amazed at Zhani's remark, but the banquet continued. Omari's wealth was not endless. As Zhani paraded through the city in rows full of diamonds, Omari's debts mounted. His business started going down. His warehouse became empty, and soon his mansion was sold. One dark night, Omari's creditor came to take what was left of his wealth, and that was when Zhani slipped away quietly. She left behind only the scent of her perfume. Zhani's next husband was Jambari, a hard-working farmer. His fields were golden with millet, and his barns were full of yams and grains. Marry me, and I'll make you the queen of my harvest, Jambari said to Zhani on his knees right there in his farm. Zhani smiled and agreed. Jambari built her a beautiful house and threw a feast in her honor. But Zhani wasn't happy with just a house. She wanted a feast, jewelries, and fancy clothes never to come to an end. Let's have a festival under the moon. I want musicians, dancers, and the best wine in Ediko, Zhani said to Jambari one evening, and her request was granted immediately. At that moonlight festival, Jambari decided to impress Zhani by joining a group of dancers to perform. However, The farmer's inappropriate dance steps quickly turned the performance into a comedy. The crowd burst into laughter as Jabari was dancing. Zhani, trying to contain her amusement, said, "Jabari, my love, your talents are better suited to farming than dancing." The guests laughed in amusement before the feast continued. Jabari loved Zhani so much, and so he did everything to make her happy. As the feast continued, Jabari's barns grew empty. There was a terrible drought that year. The rain didn't fall on time. Jabari's fields dried up, and his barns became empty. He had no food to sell and no harvest to gather. One morning, as Jabari sat in his empty field, Zhani packed her golden robes together with her jewelries, and before he knew it, she was gone, even without saying goodbye. Zhani's next husband was Fikotu, a fisherman. His nest caught so many fish that he fed entire villages comfortably. Fikotu believed he could tame Zhani's extravagant lifestyle with a simple and honest life, but he was wrong. "With the sea as my best friend, we will never go hungry," Fikotu said to Zhani one evening at the beach. Zhani married Fikotu, but instead of enjoying his simple life, she turned his beach into arenas of festivals. She hosted feasts at the beach where she invited special guests to celebrate with her. At one of Zhani's beach festivals, she dared Fikotu to catch the largest fish anyone had ever seen, promising to name the fish after him. Filled with so much determination, Fikotu took his net, jumped into his boat, and paddled away, much to the amusement of the guests. Moments later, he came struggling with a massive fish in his boat. The crowd cheered while he struggled to get the fish out of his boat. Suddenly, the fish jumped so high and got back into the river. Zhani laughed so hard and then said, "Perhaps the fish decided it didn't want to bear your name." Everyone laughed before the party continued. A few days later, the sea grew angry. Waves as tall as mountains smashed Fikotu's boats. By morning, all his boats were gone, and Fikotu had nothing. Again, Zhani was gone without any notice. She didn't want to stay with the poor fisherman. Zhani's fourth husband was Kunde, the richest traditional ruler in Ediko. Kunde had inherited massive wealth from his father, who was also the richest man in that city before he passed away. At first, Kunde's wealth seemed endless, and Zhani finally felt happy. During one of Kunde's grand palace celebrations in honor of Zhani, she convinced him to host a golden chariot race. Several noblemen eagerly joined, tying real gold ornaments to their chariots. Halfway through the race, one chariot fell, spilling its treasures. Instead of the villagers to help the fallen nobleman back to his feet, the crowd went for the gold like children chasing candies. Zhani laughed uncontrollably while watching the scene. She was amused that the people were going after gold instead of helping the nobleman back to his feet again. Zhani's lifestyle was like a hungry lion. It never stopped devouring Kunde's wealth every single day. Kunde, who once spent his days working very hard to maintain his personality, began spending all his time partying with Zhani, and so his gold ran out faster than anyone could imagine. When Kunde was left with nothing, Zhani wore her silver robe, packed her robes and jewelries in a bag, and the following morning she disappeared again without any signal. A few days later, she was walking along the street when she met Yoda, Omari's best friend. His frequent visits to Omari's residence made it easy for her to recognize him. Yoda was a very successful merchant, just like Omari. Within a short time, Zhani and Yoda started a relationship, even though everyone around them frowned at it. Some people believed He was secretly admiring her while she was married to Mary. Yoda was extravagantly wealthy, and so he thought he could comfortably shoulder Zhani's flamboyant lifestyle. But he was wrong. Finally, Yoda proposed to Zhani, after which they got married. Again, Zhani had a wedding so grand that people forgot her flaws and went after food and drinks. Everyone ate, drank, and were very happy while the celebration lasted. Immediately they got married, Zhani quickly stepped into her role of holding on to luxury in a style that astonished Yoda. She demanded expensive silks, diamond chains, and gold bracelets for her dogs, even as the feast continued every week without a break. The villagers started gossiping, but Yoda laughed it off. "A queen deserves her throne," he said, pretending to be comfortable with her lifestyle, even when he is not. Soon, Zhani's extravagant lifestyle began to weigh on Yoda's finances. The once endless flow of wealth dwindled. He started selling off his prized possessions to keep up with Zhani's insatiable desires. One night, Zhani was with Yoda when his creditors came knocking. The creditors' voices sounded so high as they demanded their money. Yoda, now a shadow of his former self, begged them to give him more time to pay up, but they refused. They insisted on taking over all his properties that night. Zhani stood at the window, watching the scene in anger. She felt embarrassed that her husband was begging like a baby. Suddenly, Yoda collapsed on the floor, and the creditors paused, unsure of what to do. On the other hand, Zhani saw what happened, and she was extremely disappointed. "He's got a shaking heart," she said to herself before she dashed back to her room. "Is he dead?" one of the creditors asked nervously. They never knew he faked it. "Maybe. We need to leave right now," another creditor replied before they hurriedly walked away. As they left, the house fell silent. Yoda got up when he was convinced they were gone. Indeed, he succeeded in making a fool of the creditors, but he never knew he couldn't make a fool of Zhani. "Zhani, where are you?" he cried out, but there was no response. Zhani was gone. She could only hear his voice echoing in the dark. Somewhere in the distance, she said to herself, "Well, it was fun while it lasted, but a queen doesn't do bankrupt kings. A queen must protect her dignity." As she walked into the dark night, Yoda's voice became a distant whisper, swallowed by the shadows, until even the memories of him melted away like snow under a blazing sun. Now, 5 men in Ediko whispered Zhani's name with bitterness within 2 years. Walking through the marketplace one evening, Zhani overheard a group of children playing a game where they pretended to be her. One child in a scarf was saying, "Bring me gold, bring me jewels. I am Zhani, queen of everything." The other children laughed and bowed dramatically. Zhani watched them quietly with a fixed smile on her face. "Even the children know my name," she said to herself while observing a feeling between pride and a strange yearning for something better. By that time, she began to feel the weight of her choices. She had left behind riches, homes, and love, but she still believed destiny owed her something better. It was during this time that she encountered Ademba, a famous craftsman who could turn wood and gold into the most beautiful creations anyone had ever seen. He was rich, but also kind and wise. Ademba was a skilled craftsman whose creations were so unique that even kings traveled great distances to buy his works. His workshop was filled with beautiful craft works. Ademba had heard about Zhani, but he decided to marry her because he had a plan. A few days after their wedding, Zhani bought some expensive jewelries. Ademba didn't say anything about it. The next morning, Ademba woke Zhani up very early and they left home. They traveled to a poor village where Ademba bought a huge farmland which he gave to some poor farmers free of charge so they can grow food and take care of their families. Every time Zhani spent money on something fancy, Ademba spent the same amount helping the villagers. When Zhani bought jewelry, Ademba built a school. When she hosted a grand feast, Ademba built a well for a village that is suffering from scarcity of water. During one of the feasts, Zhani announced a contest. Whoever could compose the best poem about her beauty would win a gold bracelet from her personal collection. No one was confident enough to come up with a poem, even when everyone knew exactly how to describe her. They waited for a while before a 10-year-old boy came forward and said aloud, "Zhani's beauty is as bright as the sun, yet her greed outshines everyone." The room was silent for a while, and for a moment Zhani was surprised. Then she burst into laughter, clapping her hands. "You win for your honesty," she declared, handing over the bracelet to him. The guests were surprised by her reaction. By that time, people had stopped paying attention to Zhani's gold and jewelries. Instead, they came to honor Ademba for his kindness and generosity. That was when Zhani felt ignored and sad. One morning, she said to Ademba, "It's obvious people no longer notice me in this village. All attention is now on you." "Yes," interrupted Ademba. "Attention is on me because I'm using my treasures to benefit humanity, but you are using yours to benefit no one but you. You don't need to spend so much money on material properties when you can actually touch a lot of lives with the resources within your reach." These words touched Zhani's heart, and she felt very bad that she decided to be a changed person from that moment. One day, while walking along the street, Zhani noticed a little girl looking at her with admiration. The child was wearing tattered clothes, and she looked very hungry. Zhani approached the little girl and knelt down in front of her. "What is your name?" Zhani asked gently. "Mama," the little girl replied with excitement. Zhani took off some of her jewelries and gave them to the little girl. "Mama, give these jewelries to your parents. They will need them," Zhani said to the little girl. People were amazed to see Zhani giving away her cherished jewelries to a little girl. One man shouted, "Zhani, are you for real?" Zhani stood up and said, "Yes, I am. True wealth is in how much laughter and love you can share. What good are jewelries if they don't bring joy to others?" The villagers applauded her the way they have never done before, and Zhani, for the first time, felt a deep sense of fulfillment. That evening, Ademba gave Zhani the saddest news of her life. "We are bankrupt. All our resources are gone. Everything we've got will be taken away by our creditors tomorrow morning." That news broke her heart like never before, because she never desired to have another broken home. Ademba watched her closely throughout that day. He expected her to be gone before the end of the day, but she did it. Throughout that night, she couldn't sleep. She was awake, crying and weeping. "Don't cry. We can rebuild from the scratch," Ademba said just to comfort her. Simply because she never wanted another broken home, she was forced to walk beside Ademba in his workshop. She wove clothes, sewed her jewelries, and helped in his workshop. Her hands grew rough, but her heart grew soft. They moved out of the big mansion to a small hut, but Zhani didn't go away. She remained with Ademba. Gradually, women started coming to Zhani, and her arms were wide open to welcome the poor. She taught them how to weave and sell their crafts. She also taught them how to sell their goods, and soon the entire village was thriving with hardworking women. Zhani found the truest happiness the moment she started reaching out to the poor and the less privileged around her. From that moment, she placed no value on diamond and gold, but on the smile on the faces of the people around her. As Zhani walked through the marketplace once more, she noticed that the whisper had changed. People no longer admired her beauty alone. They spoke of her kindness, her charm, her love, and the stories she had left behind. For the first time, Zhani was convinced her greatest treasures weren't gold and silver, but the legacy of laughter and tales she had created. Years later, Zhani and Ademba became more successful. They built schools, gave scholarships, and lifted the poor out of poverty. Zhani, once known as a gold dust woman, became Mama Zhani, a name spoken with love and respect. One evening, as they sat by the fire, Zhani said, "Ademba, you saw something in me I couldn't see. Thank you for believing in me." Ademba smiled and said, "True gold isn't something you wear, it is something you share." Zhani's reputation as a woman of beauty and wit spread far and wide, and her ability to turn misfortune into laughter traveled beyond Ediko, and so she became a legend in her own time. Her tale taught people the true meaning of kindness, love, and treasure of the heart. It also taught the villagers that every mistake can be corrected if we are ready to retrace our steps in the right direction. It was a tale that could never be forgotten in a hurry. For more interesting, exciting, and captivating stories, kindly subscribe to this channel. Don't forget to like and share our videos while you drop your comments so we can create more beautiful stories for your entertainment.